Greetings, friends in Christ. Today is Lettere Sunday, also known as Mothering Sunday. It's a Sunday in the Lenten season when we take a brief respite. We breathe a little easier in the midst of the penitential season. And it comes from, of all things in the church come from someplace, and they usually come from someplace random. It comes from the fact that on this day, the introit psalm, the psalm that would have been chanted at the beginning of the Mass, begins with the words, Lettere Jerusalem, et conventum facite omnes qui diligitis eum, which translated, and I deeply feel the irony and the cruel irony of this, Rejoice, O Jerusalem, and come together, all you that love her. Come together, all you that love her. Unfortunately, right now we cannot come together, at least not in the body of the church, but we can come together in prayer, and we can come together in mutual care for one another, and we continue to do so. Today's reading is from the Gospel according to St. John, and it is a story of healing. There are so many stories of healing in the Gospel, and I want to actually begin by reading it this week. So this comes from the 9th chapter, verses 1 through 41, so strap in. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, Go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. He went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, Is this not the man who used to sit and beg? Some were saying, It is he. Others were saying, No, but it is someone like him. He kept saying, I am the man. But they kept asking him, Then how were your eyes opened? He answered, The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, Go to Siloam and wash. Then I went and washed and received my sight. They said to him, Where is he? He said, I do not know. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. He said to them, He put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see. Some of the Pharisees said, This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath. But others said, How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs? And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened. He said, He is a prophet. The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered, We know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but we do not know how it is that he now sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age, he will speak for himself. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, He is of age, ask him. So for the second time they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered, I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see. They said to him, What did he say to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? Then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born entirely in sins, and you are trying to teach us?" And they drove him out. Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me, that I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." And he said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees heard him and said to him, "Surely we are not blind, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would not have sin. But now that you say, 'We see,' your sin remains." During Lent, we're often asked to confront our spiritual blindness, and this story about the man blind from birth offers us a new perspective on gaining sight. The first thing to note is that the blind man symbolizes all of us. We're all blind from birth, affected negatively by sin, by the fallen state of humanity. Now, what does Jesus do when he confronts the man? He announces who he is. "I am the light of the world." In John's Gospel, there's a series of I am statements. I am the bread of life. I am the good shepherd. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And here Jesus issues another of those powerful claims. I am the light. We should be put in mind of the light at the beginning of creation. C.S. Lewis said, "I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else." Jesus, the light, is the way to see. When we're grafted onto him, when we assume his mind and his attitude, when we live his life, we're able to see the world as it is, and not through the distorting lens of fear and anger, pettiness and jealousy, all the other sins that cloud us. In the story, Jesus makes a mud paste by spitting on the ground. The Church Fathers saw this as the mixing of divinity and humanity, the incarnation, which effectively saves us. God bends low in order to show us what he looks like. And then he smears the paste on the man's eyes, becoming Salvator, the bearer of salve. After the man washes in the pool of Siloam, he comes back and he's able to see. Now, at this point, we would expect that everyone around the cured man would rejoice, but just the contrary. They are infuriated, they're confounded. He's not really the one, he just looks like him. But the man himself corrects them, No, I'm the one. And then they try to tie him up in legal knots. So this man cured on a Sabbath day, only sinners cure on the Sabbath. Therefore, your cure came from an evil source. And once more, the man's response is just a masterpiece of constraint and understatement. I don't know whether he's a sinner or not. All I know is that I was blind, and now I see. Why are the Pharisees reacting like this? Why don't they want this man to be cured? I suggest it's because we sinners don't like to see as God sees. We find that view troubling and threatening because it undermines the games that we play in the world, the games of power, the games of domination, the games of manipulation, and the games we play with ourselves even more than other people. Right now, the world is being seen through a particular lens. It's being seen in a lens of fear, some of it justified, some of it out of proportion. It's being seen in a lens of scarcity as people snap things up from store shelves thinking, well, I don't care what happens to anyone else, I'm going to keep mine and my own safe. It's being seen through a lens of panic, of anxiety. But look around. Look with the eyes of Christ. Because all around there's also people seeing with the lens of compassion. People seeing with the lens of caring for their neighbors. People doing small gestures, quirky and strange, like the shamrock hunt that people did for kids, putting shamrocks in their windows so that kids out for a walk could find as many as they could on St. Patrick's Day. Musicians playing in front of the camera for YouTube, just for anyone who wants to hear music. In Italy and Spain, people leaning out on balconies, something that's probably harder to do in still very cold Canada, but leaning out on balconies and singing as a neighborhood together. People finding strange little ways to connect with one another, to be kind to one another, to show love and compassion to one another. Not to mention, of course, all of the doctors, nurses, technicians, all of the people who are in the front lines facing the disease, the truckers, the delivery people, the store clerks, all of the people who are providing necessities of life even as they realize that they could come in contact with someone who's infected. To look with the eyes of Christ is to see the world not in terms of panic or anger or scarcity or hostility, not even of anxiety, but to look on it actually as an opportunity to show love, an opportunity to show compassion, an opportunity to show healing. God gives us light so that we might see more clearly, that we might know the world more fully. This is a dark time and a confusing time, and the longer it goes, the harder it's going to get. But this gospel today invites us to look on the world with the eyes of Christ, with eyes opened by the love of the Incarnation, eyes open that they may look on the world as God looks on the world. As you look out at the world through the window, as you're socially distancing, or YouTube or a webcam or whatever, however you look at the world now, look at it with God's love. And as you look at yourself, look with love there too. Final thing before I close. I don't know how long this will last, how many more Sundays we will not be able to gather, but this is my commitment. Because it looks very likely that we will not be together on Easter Sunday, I don't know that, but it's looking likely. Here's my commitment. If we do miss Easter Sunday, whatever Sunday it is when we come back, whatever Sunday is the first Sunday that the doors of St. Albans are open again and we're able to gather again, we will celebrate that Sunday as if it is Easter Sunday. Whether it is in April or May or June or, heaven forbid, October, we will celebrate it as if it is Easter Sunday. It will be resurrection for us as we come back to life as a congregation. In the meantime, while that life may be dormant, let's keep it nurtured, let's keep it tended so that it is ready to resurrect. Keep praying for one another, keep connecting with one another, and keeping the faith. God bless.